And so you'll see a step-by-step process, because really what I want you to learn is not so much how to code up an Italian flag program. What I want you to learn is the process of writing programs and how to think like a programmer. And the best way to do that is just to watch a programmer program and see what they think about. And so instead of me just keeping all my thoughts to myself, I'll just say what I'm thinking, so that you can see what a software engineer or a software developer goes through when they're trying to build a program.
If I'm in Java 2, should I click continue?
Java 2, we are going to, I'm not starting that right now. I wanted to talk to Java 2 first after this introduction. So if you could just hang on until till then.
Okay.
But good question. Yeah, let's look at Java 2 of what we have planned today. Yeah, today is also a work day for the DIE and the DICE classes. I did update your grades. So all your grades, I did that over the weekend. I forgot to mention it yesterday. But if you want to check to see where you're at, or if there anything's missing, you can do that. But here's the assignment. There's a video playlist that's linked to the assignment for the DIE and DICE classes. This is for Java 2. And then I'm hoping that you get this done today so that we can start the next part. But there's a couple things that apply to both classes, and I wanted to just mention what things you have to avoid so it doesn't mess things up in Replit. Okay, and I've mentioned this a few times, but I think I need to write it because there's still people making this mistake. If you see this in your code, package, and then maybe let's call it shapeslib. You see any package statements in the code or in the videos that you're watching, remember that those were made using NetBeans, not Replit. Replit doesn't handle packages well. Okay, so anytime you see a package name, get rid of it. Anytime you see that in the code, it's not supposed to be there if we're doing it in Replit. We're just going to put all the methods and functions in. Let me stop sharing the screen so you can see my screen. Yeah, so if you can maximize my screen, you can see that I wrote the word package and then some package name. Just make sure you don't include those. Now, I'm not talking about the import statements. I'm talking about the package names. Now, the other mistake that a lot of people are making in both classes is that in the book and in the videos, it always has the test class called like bank account tester or DICE class tester or something. Well, in Replit, you can't call it that. It has to be called main. So you have here, whatever your tester class is, public class, whatever this is, okay, for your tester class, the one that has the main method in it, it has to be called main. It can't be called anything else, because that's where Replit is going to go look for the main method. The next thing you have typically is a public static void main string args. That's the next thing, okay? So your starting class, the class that's at the top level, is always called main. And the other thing that has to match is this has to be in a file called main.java. If those two names don't match up, then it's not going to compile, and you're going to get weird compiler errors, right? So I see this error over and over in both the Java 1 and Java 2 classes. Make sure you remember, get rid of your package statements. Next, make sure on your test class, call it main. Don't call it whatever the book says. Call it main. Make sure it's capitalized, because that's where the Replit's going to look for that main method. Okay. That's the other thing. The other thing I'm noticing is that when people get compiler errors, they don't read the errors. Okay. They don't read what the error says. They might look to see where the error is, but they don't actually read the compiler message when it's telling you, I don't understand the symbol, or there's a missing semicolon, or something like that. You need to read the error messages in order to know what to do. Now, sometimes or a lot of the times, the compiler doesn't tell you exactly what's wrong. It tells you where, but it says something that seemingly is unrelated to the actual error. Typically, it's because the error occurs on a previous line. You forgot to put a semicolon in. It's not going to say you forgot to put a semicolon in. It's going to say, well, maybe something like unexpected symbol or something like that. After a while, working with the compiler, you're going to learn what things in your code make it say a certain thing. Okay, it may seem to you that doesn't make any sense, but he says every time I do this, I forget a semicolon, I get this unrecognized symbol error or some kind of error like that, unexpected token, right? As soon as you can start matching those up in your head and say, oh, the last time I got this error is because I forgot to put a semicolon in. You got to read the error messages coming back from the compiler when you compile. So those are just general comments for both classes. So you avoid some of the frustrations of trying to get these things to work in Replit. The rest of the code is always the same, okay, so far. Okay? And we might have some differences, but it's always the same. Let me share my screen again. And now I'm going to focus on just to make sure that the Java 2 folks recognize that there's a video playlist, and we want to get the die and dice classes complete. There's one for the die class that we started a little while back, and then there's the dice class. These are the two you need to get done before we start the next part. We want to use a user interface, but I might have to pre-build it for you. Okay, instead of using an interface builder like we use here. And that means they have a user interface builder. It actually builds screens for you. It's really quite nice. And you don't have to do any coding. It generates all the code for you. In Replit, it doesn't have that. So I guess I'm the code generator, and I'll create the UI pieces that we need. But for now, my hope is that you can get to the end of this video. Okay. All right. Any questions from the Java 2 crowd? My chat window open. Participants. All right, so Java 2, you know what you need to do. You can get working on these two classes, and then next time we meet, which is Thursday, we'll start talking about the user interface. I'll work on the user interface code on Wednesday. Maybe make a new video on how to use it, because this one is probably invalid. Okay, switching over to Java 2 then, or Java 1. Switching hats again. Courses, Java 1.
All right, so I can hop off.
Yeah, you can log off, Philip. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Yeah, see you later. Java 1, check your grades. You know, that's what I told them. All the grades were done over the weekend. At least all the stuff that was due, so you can see where you sit grade-wise in student view. Today's an Italian flag workday. I know I'm asking a lot on this Italian flag, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the process, like I said, of how you walk through a project from start to end when it comes to conceptualizing it, figuring out what we're doing, and then writing the code. So we got to figure out what we're doing. So what I say first here on day 20 is that we want to look at slide 64, which is the last slide in the presentation in chapter 3. We're actually done with chapter 3. Yay. But this is our big project for chapter 3. Here's all the information you need for the Italian flag. First of all, it tells you the coordinates of the flag's location. The top left corner of the flag is 100, 100. Remember that Y is upside down. So when Y grows positive, it moves down the screen. And when Y goes negative, it moves up the screen. The origin of the screen is up in the top left corner. It's not the bottom left corner like you would see in math class in the first quadrant, right? You'd have Y here going this way, but now 0, 0 is actually up here, and Y grows positive down. Okay. So this is 100, 100. Here is 30 pixels to the right. Here's 160 pixels, or 160, and then 190. So it looks like that our color bands are 30 pixels wide. How tall are they? Well, here's the Y coordinate. Here's 100, and this is 160. So they look to be about 60 pixels high. Because we have these coordinates, we can actually figure this out. Now, remember yesterday we were talking about an aspect ratio. What's the ratio of the width to the height? Well, let's figure it out with our flag. We mentioned this yesterday, but what I'm suggesting is that, let's see if you can see that. If I get it out of the way. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this now so you can see the board. Now, people at home, can you see the board at all?
Sort
A
of.
little.
A little? Okay. I'll try to make it big, as big as I can. But if you can't see it, let me know and I'll come up with another plan. Here's our flag. And what we were saying yesterday is that the aspect ratio is 3:2. The question is 3:2 what? What I'm saying is we have 3 sections, right? And each section we could think of, there's this invisible line right here. So it's actually a 3:2 rectangle. Now, by looking at the coordinates that we saw in the on that last slide in the slide presentation, we saw that these were 30 pixels wide, each coordinate. So 30 pixels to the right, this is another 30 pixels, another 30, right? So it looks like our unit size for our flag is going to be 30:30, right? Because you stack up 2 of those and you get 60, right? And that's what you have. And then you have 3 different colors going across. So there's our 3:2, right? 3 units of 30. So 30 is going to be our flag unit. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay, our unit that we're going to use. Now, if we wanted to scale our flag, which we might want to do later, then we can use whatever number we want for our unit size. But let's just say our unit size for our discussion today is going to be 30, because that's what we see indicated in the book. Okay, so now we have an idea of how we're going to structure the dimensions of our flag. Okay, so now the question is, how do we go about coding it? Well, we kind of know, do we have all the information we need to be able to code it? We know where we need to put it. We know how big it is. We know what colors there are. There's red, there's green, and there's white. One thing we're not doing is, see here, what they're saying here is to just draw a green rectangle and a red one, and then connect the 2 with a black line to make the white rectangle. That's really lame, and it looks terrible on the computer screen. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to make a black box or black border around the whole flag. And we're going to draw a white rectangle, because in a lot of the IDEs and even in Replit, the IDE background is not white. It's grayish. We want it to be white. So we're actually going to draw a white rectangle. So we actually have 3 rectangles, not just 2. Here they just say left and right and then draw a line. And we're not doing that. Okay? But there's some code here that's helpful, right? This code here we could actually use. Okay. So what's the next step then? Of course I'm signed out. Not sure why. So I'm going to go into Replit, and the next thing you should ask yourself is, have I done something like this before? Right? Why start from scratch, or why reinvent the wheel when you've already done most of the work already in another project? So this is a graphical project. In our last graphical project, we were drawing rectangles. Remember that one? We were drawing rectangles in a kind of a little group, and then we're also printing out the area and perimeter. Well, we can take that code and just tweak it to work for what we want to do here in the Italian flag assignment. So so I'm going to go look for that assignment. You should have that one already finished, right? So I'm going to the Java 1 folder that I have, and I'm looking for my rectangles. Yeah, here it is, JFrame rectangle test. That's one. I coded this a year ago, but I know there's a lot of code in there that's very similar, will It's code that I'll need to do pretty much the same thing over in this Italian flag thing, because Italian flag is just a rectangle as well. So I'm going to open that up. And the first bit of code is I want to see what the main method looks like, right? So, I mentioned at the beginning of class that for Replit, the tester program, or the thing that does, tests out your code, has to be called main, and this one is. See, it says class main. And here's the boilerplate code that you're going to have for every JFrame. This really doesn't change from project to project. This always stays the same. It's just necessary plumbing code that you need to be able to show something on the screen. So what I would do is I would just grab all of that, all the code that's in there, copy that, and then we're going to start a new project. So if I'm copying code from one project to the other, what I like to do is I like to duplicate the tab up here at the top. So I right-click here on the tab and I say duplicate. And so now we have the same thing in both things. It shows that I'm editing in another window, but I actually want to go back to my repository, and I want to create a new REPL. Okay. And so when you create a new REPL, it asks you what language you want to do it in. Here's a couple languages I'm kind of looking at: Python and Java. Java is one we're working on today. And then give it a meaningful name so that you can figure out what it is. And so I'm going to call this one Italian flag 2. I'm calling it 2 because I already have an Italian flag, but here I'm just starting from scratch. Okay, so I'm creating this new Italian flag assignment. And let me and it gives us, the default program, the hello world program. So we just want to replace all this with what we copied, off of this one. That's why it's nice to have these in 2 different tabs. You can just copy from one to the other. So I'm going to just overwrite everything there. And now I have a JFrame. Now, if you remember, with JFrames, is first you have to create the JFrame, so that you call the JFrames constructor. And then you set its size. That might be a little small, but we'll mess with that number later. Here, what happens when you close the program? Java has this weird feature where you can stop a program, but any JFrames that it opened up will stay alive after the program is done, which seems kind of weird. So you actually have to say what happens to this JFrame when the program closes, and the answer is it needs to exit. And then you create your component. In this case, it's a rectangle component, but what we're going to create is just a regular component. So I would say I would change this to just a J component. Is that what we want to do? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we might have to change that later. And we'll just call this component a new J component. And then you add that component to your frame, and then you then you turn on the little switch that turns the frame on so that you can see it, so that the user can see it. Again, this code doesn't change that much. It's pretty static. This is what you always need to create a JFrame. Next piece of code you might need is the component. So let's go look at the component. Here we have this rectangle component, and it basically just has a draw method in it. So let's grab this whole thing, and we're going to create a component class. So I go back over here. I'm thinking, I'm changing my mind here a little bit. Let's call this, let's call this a flag component. That might be better. So instead of J component, I'm saying flag component. And then what we want to do here is we want to create our flag component source file. This is where the code is going to be for our flag component. So here I'm adding a file. I click on this little thing right here that says add the file. And I say flag component. This is a mistake a lot of people are making. They're not putting the .java at the end, or they're misspelling it. But you have to put .java, and see how it turns into a little coffee cup? Okay. So you want to do that. You hit enter and you get this empty flag component. So you go back to your rectangle assignment, and we're going to just copy everything here, and we're going to paste it in for our flag component. Now, if we've done this right, well, here the first thing we have to change is this name, right? Because remember, in Java, there's this rule that the name of the class inside the file needs to match the file name on the outside of the class over here. This one's called flag component. This one's called rectangle component. So we're going to have to change this name. And we'll say flag. But now when we run this program, it should run at this point, I'm assuming. And we should see our old rectangle assignment appear. Let's see what happens. Now I paid the extra $7 a month so that it goes a little bit faster. Yeah, so it's just running the code we have in there for the old rectangle component. But that's not what we want to draw anymore. We want to draw our Italian flag. So we have to replace the guts of this paint component method. Right? Okay, so what do we still need? Well, we still need graphics G coming in because that's our graphics context that we're using to draw with. We need to convert that to a G2 so we can use some of the fancier swing classes to create what we need. We're no longer creating this kind of rectangle, but we are creating a rectangle. Remember, we want it the color. The one on the left is, what are the three colors? I forget. It's green and red and white, right? So I think the left color is green. Okay, so we're going to create a green, the green field. But before we do that, I want to define out here what our unit size is. We decided that our unit size is going to be 30 pixels, right? So I'm just going to create this, I'd say, do I want to make this public? I might want to make this public. Let's say public static final int, and we'll say flag unit. The reason I'm making this flag unit, and I set it equal to 30, is so that we can, just by changing this one constant, we can grow and shrink the flag depending on our screen size. So if we want small flags, we change the flag unit to like 10. If we want big flags, we want to change it to 100. It'll automatically scale our flag to the size we want. So here then, we'll call this the, I don't know, instead of box, we want to give it a meaningful name. We'll call it the green rectangle. I don't know. Let's call it the green band because I don't want to type so much bands. It's a color band. Okay, the green band. And then what are the coordinates? Well, we know that we want it at 100, 100. Can you remember that one slide? Is the slide still up? Let's see that there. I'm signing out anyway. Yeah, so so we'll say 100 for the top, the X coordinate of the top left corner, and 100 down the screen, right? And then for the width, well, we know that the width of the band is going to be one flag unit, right? So we just say flag unit. Now you notice with constants, you use all caps, and then any words are separated with underscores. So we have, it's 1 flag unit wide by how many flag units tall? Anybody know? Yeah, 2. So to do that, you would just say 2 times flag unit. So if we use flag unit for the width and the height, then we can change the size of our flag easily by just changing that one constant. All right. And then we draw it. And then I'm just going to get rid of all of this stuff because that's all code that was there before. We don't need anymore. And my hope is that when we run this, we'll see the green part of the flag. So I'm going to stop the program and then rerun it and see what we get. Oh, I got an error. Oh, it says box. We changed our name to green band. Green band. Okay. So I run it again, and we're not going to get what we want. It's close. Well, it is the right band. It's not green. And the outline color is black. So how do we fill it with green? Well, what we could do is we could just do this. We could say G2 dot set color, and then you say color dot, and then you can pick any of these lists. Now, for some reason, they list each one twice. One is in lowercase and one in uppercase. Not sure why. It should be a constant, so we're going to use the constant. It might be an enumeration. I don't know, but the enumerations in Java they don't work correctly. So basically what we're doing is we're saying, hey, I want to pick up the green pen to draw with. Instead of calling draw, though, I want to call fill. Fill means it's going to create a filled whatever is inside the parentheses. So we're going to say fill instead. Okay. So I'm going to stop it, restart it, and see if we get a filled green rectangle. It says it doesn't know what color is. What's the problem? It seemed to know what color is because it was telling us about color. Well, we have to load the input for color since we don't have it here. But I'm not really sure what library or what package color is in. So maybe it's in this one. We can just do some guessing. We say import javax .swing there's a color chooser, but it's not in javax.swing. So java.awt color. Yeah, there it is. Okay. It needs to be capitalized. Okay. So now we've imported our color classes. Now it knows what colors are, or the compiler will be able to find it. We'll run it again and see if we get our green band. We do. It's green. Now, is that the actual green color they use in an Italian flag? The answer is no. It's really awful. That's like the shirt I was wearing yesterday. So we're supposed to be retro today, or what was it? Throwback day. So this is my throwback outfit. Basically, in the 1980s, I was in a rock band. We traveled overseas, and so this is my touring jacket. See, it's got the cool logo on the back. American Collegiate Talent Search. logo. This is where I got to perform with Jeff Dunham overseas. It was really kind of cool. If you know who Jeff Dunham is. And so I got to wear this all summer over in Germany, mostly in Germany. All right, so we have our green band. I didn't get to Italy though. Here and doing an Italian flag, I didn't get to do that. Well, the other ones are pretty similar, right? You're going to have a red band and a white band. Maybe you do the white band next, because that's the one next to the green one. What you have to figure out though is what are the coordinates? I mean, this part will be the same, the flag unit, 2 times the flag unit, but these coordinates will be different. So I'll help you on this first one, but I'll let you do the third one, okay? So we're just going to create another rectangle. So what I would do is I would just copy this code because it's very similar. And we're just going to tweak it to make it do what we want. You know, we can't have 2 green bands. That's a good name collision. So this is going to be our white band, let's say. And then for our code, it might be nice to specify the X coordinate based on the flag unit. We're basically 1 flag unit to the right, XYs, because this is now in the middle. So maybe we say plus flag unit. Yeah, how handy that constant comes in, right? And then we say, well, what's the Y coordinate? Well, it's going to be the same, right? Because vertically the bands are at the same point on the screen vertically. So it'll still be 100. There'll still be 1 flag unit wide and 2 flag units tall, so that's the same. And then we want to set our color to white. So I'm going to change that to white. It has to be all capitals, because that's a constant as well, perhaps. And then instead of filling the green band, we're going to fill the white band. There you go. And if we did everything right, we should have 2 color bands now. We should have the green and then the white. I think the word is field. Yeah, so there we go. 1 right next to each other. So I'm going to let you do the third one. Okay, that's red, but it's basically a similar idea. I do want to show you the power of using a constant though. Say let's change this to 100. I'm going to just change the flag unit to 100 and see what happens to our graphic. And notice on our graphic, color bands are much larger now. See that? So just by changing the flag unit, I was able to change the whole dimensions of the flag because of the way I've written the coordinates or the dimensions of the flag unit. Okay. So your code is there. Now don't forget, you still have 1 more rectangle you have to draw. And that's, well, there's going to be the red rectangle, but and 1 more after that. And that's the box around the outside, the outline black box to kind of tie everything together. It's kind of like a border. This one you wouldn't call fill, you would call draw. But you might want to set the, well, I would just draw a box. I would set the color to black before you draw the box, but make sure not to fill it, or otherwise you're just going to put black over the rest of your flag. You just want to use the outline like we did that first rectangle. So how many rectangles do you have to create? Not just 3, you have to create 4. You have to do that last border one. Now in the assignment, in the book, it says to connect the 2 color bands with a line. We're not doing that. We're drawing a box around the whole thing. Okay. So that should be enough to get you going. Again, the red band is going to be very similar. It's just going to start in a different X location. Just a little bit for 1 more flag unit to the right. Right. And it's going to be red. Now, one of the warnings you get, well, when you compile is it says it needs a version number for some reason. We're not going to serialize this. We're not writing this out to a disk. But if you want to get that to shut up, then you can put that there. It's kind of a new feature of Java. They'd like to put serial numbers on their serialization capabilities, I guess. All right, so not too hard, just 2 files. We're not using our shapes library, like I said. I'm trying to simplify this a little bit. We're just relying on the Java version of the shapes instead of our own version. Okay, so that simplifies the assignment as well. So you only need 2 files: the main method and the main class, and then the flag component. Now, next time we meet, we'll look at how we might scale this so that as our screen gets bigger, our JFrame gets bigger and smaller, so does our flag. So our flag will automatically scales itself dependent upon how big a drawing surface it has in the JFrame. But we'll talk about that next time. All right, so I'm recording this, so I'll put this out. I'll try to get to it sometime today. It's always a challenge trying to find time, but I'll see if I can do that. I have a meeting right after school, so it might be later on this evening. But you will have a copy of this presentation. All right, any questions before we call it a day? Yeah, questions? Yeah. Well, I would just set the color to black. And then instead of calling fill, you just call draw. Draw will draw a line. Yeah, yeah. So fill is if you want a filled object or fill shape. Draw is if you don't want a filled shape. You just want to have the outline. Good question. So the question was, I should have repeated the question. So what do we have to do to draw that outside rectangle? And say, well, just change the color to black, and then instead of calling g2.fill, you would call g2.draw, and then the name of the black rectangle. Any other questions? Well, I know you're going to have questions on, yeah. Somebody has a question?
Yeah, I'm getting an error message. So when I use the g2.fill,
Okay.
it's saying that green band cannot be, rectangle cannot be converted to shape. That's what the error message says.
So here, I would make sure that up here, you're loading this import and not the shape 2D version.
Okay.
Is
All
that,
right,
yeah, so make sure you load that one, and make sure not to include any of the shape 2D or the rectangle that goes along with it. Maybe just have these 2 files in the project, because I'm changing it around a little bit just to simplify it a bit. There was another good question. I think Nick had this question, is on the cash register assignment. A lot of people are scratching their heads and go, well, where's the code for this? And the answer is, well, the code's in your head. You have to write it. Okay. You go through the steps in the cash register how-to, which is on page 80 something, and it's iterative. You first create the structure, and then you fill in all the methods, but it doesn't tell you all the code. Some of the code you have to fill in yourself. And if you're waiting for a video on that, you're not going to get one. The idea here is, can you code independently? I need to find out who are my independent coders and who are not. Now, I realize a lot of us aren't independent coders yet, and so that's why I spent this time today going over exactly how to create the Italian flag. But for the cash register, I want you to do the best you can with the information you have and what you've learned so far. You should be able to complete it successfully. But I haven't got a lot of questions, so if I don't get questions, I assume everybody's getting it. If you don't ask questions and you're stuck, that's a mistake in this class. Asking questions is a sign of intelligence. Some people think asking questions makes you look weak or makes you not look intelligent, and that's just the opposite. Okay, if you're stuck and you can't figure it out, that's when you need to ask questions. So make sure you do that. So that's on the cash register assignment. But don't get bogged down. If you're bogged down in the cash register assignment, send me an email and say you need help, and then get to work on this flag assignment. I'll get the video out there in case you missed something today. All right.